My number one piece of advice when men are choosing a long-term partner is like the number one red flag I would look for is, does she require great levels of stimulus in order for her to feel satisfied?
Welcome to Maxed Out Man, helping you become the man you were made to be.
Hey guys, it's Kevin Davis from the Maxed Out Man podcast. Today I'm going to be here with Michael Sartain. Super excited to have him on board. I already had a couple of technical issues, so this should be fun. Appreciate your patience with that, Michael. But hey, before we get started, go to maxoutman.com, check out what we've got going on there. And don't forget to rate and review this podcast on all of your favorite podcast platforms. Michael Sartain is a performance coach, Air Force navigator, instructor, and host. In 2019, he launched Men of Action, a program committed to guiding men in elevating their status, cultivating an abundant lifestyle, forming connections with elite individuals, and gaining access to VIP events, all within a span of under 25 days of the program. With over 2,200 success stories, Men of Action is making a significant impact. And additionally, Michael is the host of the Michael Sartain podcast, Michael Sartain Show podcast. Hey man, thanks so much for your patience. Truth be told, I forgot to hit record on the first 2 minutes of this podcast, so
it was great. It was life-changing.
Yeah, that was the best 2 minutes I've ever done, and it wasn't captured for posterity. Yeah. But we did get the 2,200 right with the success story. So hey man, thanks for being here. I appreciate it. And I'd love to hear more about kind of how you got here, your story, kind of what led you here. Thank you for your service, by the way, for your military service. Side note, my daughter's in the Army and she hates it when I say that.
And so, thank you for your service.
Yeah.
You just kind of get used to it, man. I mean, it's just like, imagine a super hot girl's like, wow, you're really pretty. After a while, they're like, okay, cool. You know what I'm saying? Or what do you think Joe Rogan's like every day? He's like, oh, I love your podcast. He's like, oh.
That's right. I'm sure he probably gets that, right? Yeah. But I mean, at the same time, most people are, and she's had this conversation. Most people are genuinely thankful for the sacrifice
for sure
that men and women make. So and I am one of those. I never did military. Mm-hmm. So I kind of but I'm super thankful for those that did. So anyway, Thank you for that. But give us your backstory. Kind of tell us how you got here, how you got to Men of Action, and everything you've got going on right now.
Well, so like a lot of people when you're younger, say in my 20s, I was a freshman at University of Texas at Austin, and I remember there was a guy I was a freshman with, and he played on the baseball team, and this guy and I didn't understand at the time. This guy was so good looking that he ends up being on The Bachelor. By the way, he on The Bachelorette. He's one of the guys on The Bachelorette. He was like a top 3 finalist. Anyway, we're college freshmen together, and I remember going to a party and never having experienced this before, where women not only didn't even notice I was in the room, but they were literally asking me to hold the camera to take pictures of them with him. And from my standpoint as a dude, like I can't tell the difference that I know he's better looking than me, but like it was absurd. Like the attention that he would get from women.
Well, in all seriousness, like from a purely objective heterosexual man perspective, you're a good looking guy, right? If you're not watching this, go to YouTube and you can see Michael. Michael is a very attractive man. So anyway,
I don't know how attractive I was at 19, but the thing is, so I just noticed there was this like massive difference. The other thing is though, he also got like a lot of opportunities that I didn't get, where he got invited to certain stuff, and we didn't have podcasting and social media back then, but it was very clear to me that women sort of bifurcated men into a higher status arena and a lower status arena. This is something later on when I started studying evolutionary psychology. Ironically, the leader in that subject on Earth is Dr. David Buss, who also went to the University of Texas at Austin. I did not meet Dr. Buss when I was a student there. Since then, we've met since I've graduated. And he's been instrumental in me creating this program, because he basically took a lot of things that you and I probably take for granted, and he started doing studies on them so we could understand these concepts better. So one of the things I wanted to understand is like, is it just with men? Is it just being good looking? Is it just being rich? Are those the only things? And there's some people who believe that. They're called black pillars, and they legitimately believe all that matters is your physical appearance to women. And if you don't have a physical appearance, then you need money. And
either or, because a lot of these, I had this conversation with my wife the other day. We're like, all right, so you got Bezos, right? Bezos super rich now, and he's on TRT, so he's been working out, and and obviously has a new girlfriend every week or whatever. But like, if there's also a lot of rich men that have no attractiveness whatsoever, and they still
Yeah.
seem to pull that same thing.
So the thing is, I started to look for these attraction qualities, and I spent probably the next 20 years looking at guys who are really, really good with women and guys who weren't. Now, before we go any further, this turns into actual attributes for status for not just attracting women, but just in general, these evolutionary cues that exist in humans that cause people to just be higher status and lower status. This also includes concepts in leadership. If you read any of Jocko Willick's books, like the idea of extreme ownership, dichotomy of leadership, this also goes back to that. Like, why is it that men generally see the world more in a meritocracy? So, like, for instance, if we have a hunting party and you and I go hunting with a group of 10 other men, if there's one hunter who's a bit older than us and he catches more game than we do on a regular basis, he will be our leader by default because he's more competent. And generally in male-dominated societies, men rank other men as far as competency is concerned. The quarterback's generally the highest paid player on the team. He's always a captain, on the football team, right?
Right.
So that kind of thing. All right. So now, so I started looking, I was like, okay, what are these attributes that cause people to gain higher sexual selection and higher status? And I started looking at a lot of them. And then, like you said before, there's a short guy who's not very attractive and he's got a gorgeous girlfriend. What's going on here? And I started paying attention to these guys who were very successful. I remember later on in life, I went on a date with who I thought at the time was the prettiest girl I'd ever seen in Austin, Texas. And we go on a date and the date goes well. And then she basically totally friend zones me afterwards. This would have been, gosh, it would have been like 26 years ago. And her and I are still friends, by the way. And a week later, so I'm working at a nightclub. I'm a bouncer at a nightclub. She comes back into the nightclub with another guy who's about 6 inches shorter than me. And he comes in there and he's got this look on his face like he's just ready to fight, looks very confident, like very cocky. And a couple months later, she has a baby with him. So here I was. I want you to consider this concept. Like, here I was. It's like, oh, I'm just being super nice to this girl. She's really pretty. She's obviously physically attracted to me. Maybe we can make this work. This other guy comes in and I got to know him. He became one of my best friends. His name's Dion. And I just noticed like this unbelievable level of entitlement when it came to women. And he wasn't like particularly good looking or anything like that. This guy had like multiple baby mamas. Like, it was just one of these things. And I was just like, okay, what is the part that I'm missing here? And I would ask, the girl, like years later, I was like, what is it you found attractive about him? Because like, he was just so confident. I was like, okay, cool. So now I know being really good looking is a great way to get women. Being confident, these are going to seem like very obvious to people. The difference is what we did was actually study them and actually see how well each one of them worked. So the big one is this. This is the one where a lot of people don't really understand. And the main one that everyone gets for free, Kevin, that every guy gets for free, that most men don't understand, is this concept in psychology called mate choice copying. If you guys want to look up in evolutionary biology, it's called mate choice copying, or if mate choice copying in humans would be in evolutionary psychology, is this concept where you have a two-gender species, and this generally affects women way more than men. If you see a man, so for instance, whenever I go out here on the street, one of my friends is Steve Demopoulos. He's like the biggest lawyer in the city. He's got a huge billboard, and it says, Demopoulos law, we win. It just says we win.
We
it's
win.
Just a picture of his fist. That's it. Billions won, something like that, right? And so you see that, you're like, oh gosh, billions have won from this guy. The social proof. I want to go to him, right? So we understand this concept of social proof. With women, though, there's two things going on here. There's social proof, so you can see that this guy's more successful, but there's also other women choosing him, which is an attraction cue. So you think about us as a man, what do we have? We see a really attractive woman, and immediately we have perfect information. If this was 1993 and you bumped into Pamela Anderson, you don't even need to know who Pamela Anderson is. You would just look at her and be like, I would date this woman. She is so physically attractive. I have enough information not to marry her. And we can go into this, Kevin, by the way. Lower status man probably will marry a woman who, just because she's physically attractive. A higher status man who has options probably isn't. But we would definitely go out with her. For a woman, when they look at us as men, they have what's called incomplete information. They don't know if we're terrible in bed, if we're going to stalk them, if we're physically abusive. They don't know. There's so many things they don't know. When I go out in social situations, I have two females that are playmates that I'm very good friends with, CJ Sparks and Kindly Myers. When I go out with them on a regular basis, women approach me because they see two stunning women with me, and they're also very, like, both of them have like 3 million followers on Instagram. When they come, women will come and approach me because of what I talked about before, pre-selection, or the term is mate choice copying. And mate choice copying also works even if the woman isn't dating you. So what I decided to do was build a program. And now there's several other attraction triggers, like, for instance, charisma is a great one. Humor is such a cheat code. Humor, it truly is the 5'2" guy who's not very good looking, who dates the stunning woman. The humor is the killer there. That is, but humor is also the most difficult one for me to teach, and it's really hard.
Is it sustainable, right? Like, that's the, like, is humor the door opener? Because my wife finds me physically attractive, a provider, all of those things.
Yeah.
But one of her favorite things about me is I tend to be funny.
Yeah.
But like, if I was just funny, and now I weighed 350 pounds because I'd let myself go, and I was, all that stuff. Like, how is that a long-term differentiator?
No. So let's, this is kind of a different subject here, but do you remember, if you ever play Madden, or if you play MLB The Show, or one of these games where the players have attributes? I want you to consider every attribute you have. So, like, for instance, think of like a big defensive tackle. He's going to have 99 strength, but maybe 67 speed. But like Tyreek Hill is going to have 99 speed and maybe like 70 strength, right? So there's different attributes. The answer to your question, Kevin, is every attribute needs to be up to about an 80. So what you can't be is the tall, good-looking guy who's fat or smells bad.
Right.
Or for a long-term relationship, you'll see these women will pick like a male stripper for short-term, but long-term would not settle down with him because he's not a good long-term bet for provisioning. So the answer is to have all of the, like, don't be super successful attorney with messed up teeth. Like, you need to have all of these attributes, because women judge more attributes in men than the other way around, number one, and women are more selective than men. This goes back to the 1970s. A doctor named Robert Trivers came up with this idea of a parental investment hypothesis, which basically means in any two gender species, the one with the larger sex cell is going to be more picky. In Homo sapiens, that's females, they're going to be more picky. And the opposite idea, which is the gender that has the smaller sex cell, is going to compete with other members of that gender for access to the females. And that's exactly what we see in Homo sapiens.
Quick question. Is there like because I know that selection really makes sense. Is there a fear and provision component? Are those the two? Like, I don't want to be for a woman, I don't want to be a male stripper because long-term, like, he's good to look at, but that's only going to last for so long. And I'm not confident that he can actually provide.
Well, you have another issue in that you also are not confident he's going to be faithful. That's the other issue with that type of, for a long term. Now, I can introduce you to a bunch of male strippers. They don't have any trouble with women. They have women throwing themselves at them all constantly. And some of the women that throw themselves at these guys, I've seen them, are down for long. Like, I know one woman right now, she's dating a male stripper. She's a therapist and she makes a ton of money and she just doesn't care that he's broke. You see that occasionally in those types
like
of situations.
Boy toy, literal boy toy, right?
Yeah,
like,
but for the most part, that's not the way it's going to work, right? She's also a little bit older than him, so I think that's why that works. But for the most part, that's not how you're going to see it. So going back to what we said before, there's all these attraction triggers that men can cue in women. So the two best ones that you can do, no matter what you look like, what your ethnicity is. I have a client right now. He's 4'11". He's dating a super, super hot girl. And the reason why is because every time they would hang out, he never hit on her. And she always saw other women coming and hugging and kissing him. And it got to the point where she just got jealous. And then she started feeling an attraction for him, got to know him. And then the thing is, women are also more likely to sort of ignore physical cues than other people, than men are. Men have a harder time with that. So it's a way for men to kind of get around that whole thing where it's not always Chad, the super good-looking bartender, who gets the girl. The world doesn't work like that if you understand these other concepts as far as social status, sexual selection, social networking, social proof. Those things are things that I teach in my course, and then I back them up. Every single one of the theories that I have, I try to go back and I read Stephen Stewart Williams or Jeffrey Wilson. Jeffrey Miller, or I'll go back and read David Buss or Lita Cosmides or John Tooby. I'll go back and watch all these evolutionary psychologists over the last 50 years and some of the theories that they've come up to explain some of these concepts. And it's been really, really fantastic in order to do that. But in doing so, what I also found is that it's not just a function of being more attractive to women. It's a function of having more status in general. Now, when you have more status, like, often I'll help my clients build a brand. So let's say I have a client who's an accountant. And he's just, hey, man, the women I date are very average. I'm not very happy. I'm on dating apps. And then also my job, I have a hard time like scrounging up business. Well, I have the perfect solution for this guy. What I would recommend is that he builds a brand. So maybe direct to camera videos on Instagram Reels, TikTok, and on YouTube Shorts. And then when he does those direct to camera videos, maybe push some traffic there, some boost, grow his social media profile. And the funny thing that happens is, and also make it more interesting. I've always said, accountants, if you're an accountant, you should tell the stories about the guy trying to hide money, trying to evade taxes.
Right, yeah.
Like you had an accountant, you had an account buddy, and he was hiding money for a drug dealer and trying to write off his some prostitute's boob job. Like that's an interesting story that
Right,
you can tell
that
as an
is.
accountant to help build a brand. Now he ends up building the brand. He goes over, these are the 3 things that you think you can write off that you can't write off. I'm going to listen to that. I'm going to listen to that. He builds a brand, and now he goes on a date for a time with a really attractive woman, and she like doesn't know fuck all about this guy. And then she goes and looks, and she's like, oh, this guy's got 700,000 followers on TikTok. What is it? This video got 8 million views. And all of a sudden now there's a little sprinkle of competency and security that goes along with this guy to make him a little bit more interesting. So he's built a brand, and now he has more. This is not a hypothetical. I have Mark Perlberg is one of my clients. He's an accountant. He literally started doing Zoom calls and started doing kind of a live stream podcast. And now he's like, dude, I have more clients than I know what to do with. Another perfect example of this is a good friend of mine named James Sexton. He is the most famous divorce attorney in the world. James had dinner with me for my birthday last week. And James started going on these podcasts describing like some of the difficulties like when it comes to divorce, like how women will run to a divorce attorney so that the attorney is conflicted out and he can't work for the husband, etc. And he started making all these videos and started bringing up all these like updated statistics when it came to divorce. Next thing you know, he's on Soft White Underbelly. He's going on Lex Friedman. He's going to be going on Joe Rogan here in the future. Like, and so now I talked to James. I was like, what's business like? He's like, I can't scale my business because it's just me. But my clients are all billionaires now because I can only take the clients that have the most money. And I just literally, so his capacity as a divorce attorney is at 10 now because of the fact that he built a brand. And whenever I go out with James and we're in public, women are throwing themselves at him because he's an extremely popular attorney that lives in Manhattan. And they know he's extremely successful. And so what's happened is, what has this brand done? This brand that he's built for being a divorce attorney of all things has made him incredibly successful financially and incredibly successful with women. Although he's in a committed relationship, he doesn't need that success. But that's one of the things I did notice is that women would notice him. It's like, oh my gosh, that's James Sexton, right? I saw this guy on Soft White Underbelly. So that's the kind of thing that happens. And the other thing that's very different, Kevin, from the time that you and I were growing up is that there was not a mid-tier level of fame. Okay.
Right.
Like, for instance, this concept of you and me doing this podcast in 1996 would not have existed because we would have to get, like, I think what it would be like, what was it? Television, a local access television, you know what I'm talking about?
PBS channel or something like that.
That would be the only shot that you and I had to do something like this, right? There'd be no profanity. There'd be nothing lascivious. There'd be no controversial content whatsoever. It'd have to be extremely progressive, politically progressive in order for us to get away with this.
Yeah.
And so we wouldn't be able to do this. So what's happened now is you and I could legitimately start a program. Let's say you have a coaching program for, let's say you talk about how to build a podcast. You build your coaching program and you build it up to a point where you only have 20,000 people following you on Instagram or 10,000. TikTok is going to be a little bit more. TikTok's easier to grow on TikTok, but the leads are not very good. If you guys are trying to build a business, you should use TikTok, but don't invest a ton in it. It's really, really, really poor quality leads. Unless you're selling,
it's cheap PPC, but to your point, it's really low quality. Like you get a ton, so it doesn't, it doesn't necessarily pay off depending on what you're doing.
Hermosi just put out a great video on this. The S tier is still going to be YouTube and Instagram. Underneath that is going to be it's going to be Facebook and Twitter, and then under that is going to be LinkedIn, and then at the very bottom is going to be TikTok. So it's still grow on TikTok. There's still a lot of room for growth, and TikTok is probably eventually going to get their act together and start figuring out a way for people to monetize for better leads. If you have a $3 product, TikTok is actually a great place. If you sell supplements for under $10, I would definitely use TikTok.
Yeah.
But he builds a brand on these different platforms, and then next thing you know, like I said before, you start having this efficacy and people start inviting you on different their podcasts. And then maybe on YouTube, you get 1 or 2 videos that have 100,000 views or 800,000 views. Next thing you know, you've got 20,000 subs, 30,000. I started with 18,000 when I started my podcast. Now I'm at 180,000.
Nice.
When you do that, when you do that, what happens is now people are going to investigate you. Generally for women, it's going to be way more of a vanity metric for Instagram and TikTok. For men, especially if this guy's in business, the first thing I'm going to look at is his Spotify, his Apple Podcast, and his YouTube. And so now people are doing investigations to kind of see, can you back up some of the things you say? I see guys, they're just wealthy. They don't really understand how to build a brand. They buy a bunch of Instagram followers. Then you go look at them on YouTube, and they don't even have like 50 views a video, but they have 100,000 views on Instagram. So these concepts that we teach in the program that I'm talking to you about right now are things that I go through and curtail different types of brand building. A lot of guys don't want to build a brand. They just want to have really cool photos and then be able to like deal with other people from social dynamics. I teach them studies and leadership. How to maintain a relationship, I think, is a big one. I do think there needs to be, like, for instance, women definitely do not want to be with a man who cheats, but they don't want to be with a man who couldn't. Right? Like if you're so unattractive as a man that your woman knows that she could literally leave you with a pile full of attractive women and you couldn't get laid because something's wrong with you, she's also going to be looking for another partner. Now, like there's studies that show men who cheat and men who don't cheat in a relationship or in a marriage have the same level of marital satisfaction. Consider that right now. Men who cheat and men who don't cheat report having the same level of marital satisfaction. Women who cheat 79% of the time report having lower satisfaction in the marriage than women who don't cheat. So that's a pretty massive difference between men and women that you would discuss there. But these are the kind of things that we talk about in the course because a lot of people don't understand. A lot of times it's women who leave relationships about 70 to 80% of the time. They're the ones who file for divorce about 70 to 80% of the time. And it goes back to the original thing I said before. Women are more selective than men in general. And when they don't feel the validation that they were receiving at the beginning of the relationship, they're going to get out much quicker than men are. That's what the studies say. And then also when you talk to divorce attorneys, they also completely agree with that concept. So it's just one of these situations where you asked me before about where we got to this place. I got to this place because I started noticing incomplete, bad advice, or more like pop psychology used to treat what men were going through. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to use high-level psychological advice by multiple PhDs and then also apply it with men who are incredibly successful in relationships and with women and successful in business. And so we come at it from both ends. So like we will come at dating from the David Buss evolutionary psychology end, and then we'll come at it from the incredibly successful. Like I'm friends with Dan Bilzerian. He's a super extreme example, but a guy who basically used massive levels of fame and pre-selection to get women lined up to try to go out. Even today, that still happens. So those are kind of things that I would teach men. And it was really amazing when I started the course. I had an idea of how successful it would be, but I didn't recognize that it would be this. Like I didn't really recognize that no one else was teaching this. And I mean, no one was teaching. Even if you look you go to ChatGPT right now and look up social circle coaches, it's like just me. There really aren't any social circle. It's just me. And the idea of like, there's networking coaches, but networking coaches are almost exclusively business oriented. And what I was doing was taking because I understood that the highest level concepts from dating and the highest level concepts from business ended up being the same concepts. When you get to the avoiding beta behavior, when it comes to avoiding neediness, the ability to walk away, these are things you do in high level negotiation and you do in dating. And so when I started seeing that, that's what I started teaching. And then the course just blew up in part because I just had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of testimonials of guys showing me. And by the way, we don't let you tell us, you have to show us. If there's been a change in your life, you're all of a sudden dating an amazing woman or your life change, you have to show. You come on the Tuesday calls and you have to show us. There's no talking. We don't talk about stuff on our program. We only show. And that's why it's called the Men of Action course. And that's another thing it's just created an environment of men just basically building each other up, giving accountability and feedback, just an amazing network of upstanding men. And the other thing is a function of morality. I also think, and you've probably seen this too, where I feel like there's a younger generation that is very much willing to promise things that they cannot back up. And in Men of Action, one of the rules we have is we always under promise and over deliver. It's a very, and also, from the cadet code of conduct from the U.S. military, I will not lie, cheat, or steal, nor will I tolerate anyone amongst us who does. There's a way for you to be incredibly charismatic and incredibly interesting to people while also always telling the truth. That's another thing that we try to teach in the program that I think is very different from what a lot of other people teach.
It's an integrity piece, right? Like
Yes.
you're honing in on that integrity piece that women seem to have pretty good bullshit detectors.
Some don't care. Like the thing is, women's attraction cues are so varied. I know women who absolutely date scumbags, and you know them too. Like they're absolutely, all they do is they're just attracted to one scumbag after another, and then they want to blame men for why they have these issues. And then there's other guys who are full of integrity and are just kind of getting stepped on by women. So it works both ways. Having some level of integrity works. But the thing is this, right? Women will say something like, I want a man to buy me flowers. What they mean is, I want a man I'm attracted to buy me flowers. Women will say, I want a man to be more vulnerable. What they mean is, I want a man I'm attracted to be more vulnerable. The problem is, men, I consistently hear this dating advice from women and men, and it's usually very poor, about men need to step up. Men need to open doors. Men, like, oh, there's all these things. And while in general, the world would be a better place if men did these things, that's not why women are picking them. They're picking men they are attracted to. Let me say that again, because some of you, it's like, this seems so obvious. Women pick men they are attracted to. Attraction cues that men give to women, things that trigger attraction in women, are very well understood at this point. They've been studied over and over again. You can read any evolutionary psychology textbook on what these attraction cues are. And if you do them, you will have success and access to women. If you don't do these things, you will not. No matter how much money you have, if you have a lot of money and don't understand attraction cues, you're just a target to financial predators. Again, you must understand attraction cues in order to make this work. Unless you're incredibly good looking, in which case you don't have to understand attraction cues, you just are an attraction cue. But for the most part, guys who understand these attraction cues, they're the ones who do well, and it's just attraction in the beginning. All the other stuff that they talk about is, I need a man who's with integrity, who wants to raise a child. I'm like, I promise you've gone on dates with men who don't have integrity and have no interest in being in a committed relationship with you, and you just thought they were hot. Attraction is your prime objective as a man in the beginning, and then after a while, you can work on those other things. But I think a lot of men are like, oh, I like a, you'll hear women say, I like a man who's I'm a sapiosexual. I like a man who reads a lot of books. And then you just go up to a girl and be like, hey, I read a lot of books, and watch, she's not going to go on a date with you. She's not interested in you at all. Because what she's saying is, I want a man I'm attracted to read a lot of books. And but women leave the attraction part out. It's like trying to explain to a fish what water is. They can't conceive of the idea of not being in water. Women cannot conceive of the idea of being attracted to someone they don't find attractive. So they always leave the part out, is the part they leave out is, I don't want a man to buy me flowers. I want a man I'm attracted to buy me flowers. And so that attraction component is integral. And if men understood that more, they would be having less trouble with women.
What are some of those attraction cues, right? Like, we keep talking about it, and you kind of alluded to some of them, but like, if you just said, okay, these are some of the highlights, these are some of the most important ones. What are those?
So the biggest ones, you could make derivatives of this to go up to like 100 different attraction cues, but the biggest one for me is going to be social status. So fame is social status up to a certain level becomes fame. Below that, though, you're still getting a lot of attraction cues. This is something that I found whenever I host an event. Girls who are there with their boyfriends are just staring at me. The fame one, the like mid-tier level of fame, is probably the most powerful one. And then social status in general, after that is going to be pre-selection. This is one that's very confusing for a lot of people, because you're going to talk to a woman and she's going to say something, I don't like guys who are surrounded by other women, but yet you'll see that they date those same men. Women will complain about the thing that actually affects them. I often hear women complain about men who are surrounded by other women, but then will still date those men. Okay, so that's another one. Is pre-selection or mate choice copying. Being selected by other women is the next biggest one. After that is going to be a function of charisma and networking. You remember the thing you said about being funny and how she found you being funny being attractive. So from an evolutionary standpoint, you having a sense of humor shows that you have higher networking potential. Meaning it's more likely that more high status people are going to want to be around you, and it's more likely that you are of higher intelligence. Humor is so complicated in order to do. That's the reason why AI can't quite get it right, because it's such a unique, like when you and I would react to something funny, and we would know that it's funny because like no one would have to train us to understand that it's funny. But that's the thing, like for the AI algorithm quite hasn't got to that point yet. where it can figure that out because it's so nuanced. When women see that a man is intelligent, and by the way, this is not happening in the foreground, it's happening in the background. It's the subconscious is recognizing this man is probably a good bet for good high status networking and protection and provisioning, and probably highly intelligent.
You know, I've been super blessed to be able to feed into the lives of tons of men from all around the world and all walks of life. And I'm very excited to announce that I do have a couple of spots available right now. If you're interested in working with me, and we can talk about pretty much anything: marriage, business, fitness, parenting, being a dad, dogs, cars, whatever you want to talk about, I'm available to do that. We want to focus on the things that may be most beneficial to you and some things that you may not even know would be beneficial to you. You've listened to the podcast, you kind of know my style. If you are interested in working with me, I want to try to make it as simple as possible, but I also want to make sure we're a good fit. Send an email to coaching@maxoutman.com and just give me 2 pieces of information: why you would like to work with me and what that might mean for you, what things you would hope to accomplish by meeting with me. That'll kick off the process. I'll reach back out to you. We can jump on a call and see whether or not it would be a good fit. So go to maxedoutman.com, coaching@maxedoutman.com. Send me an email with those 2 pieces of information, and we'll see if it's a good fit. And I hope it is, and I hope that we can actually connect.
Now, here's a funny one. You want to know what is not an attraction trigger? And women are going to disagree with this, but I can show you studies. It's absolutely indefatigable. Intelligence is not an attraction cue. It isn't. Intelligence,
and that's like pure intelligence, right? Like
yes.
book smarts,
Pure,
as we would call it,
pure
versus
book smart intelligent is not an attraction cue. Again, women are going to be like, no, I think nerds are sexy. No, you think sexy nerds with 6-pack abs are sexy. You don't think nerds are sexy.
Or with a huge bank account, right?
With a huge bank account, you think they're sexy. You don't think nerds in a vacuum are not sexy to women. They smell funny and have fucking, like acne, and nerds are not sexy to women. What's happened though is what women do find in attractive is competency, which leads to the ability to procure resources in the future. So instead of saying nerds are sexy, women like to date first year associates in a law firm, or they want to date a first year resident at a hospital because they have their law degree or their doctorate degree. What are they doing? They see the potential for this person to become higher status. It's funny because there are associates that work at law firms that will never make as much money as a plumber who owns his own plumbing company. The guy who owns his own plumbing company will actually make more money, but it's a lower status job. And there's a study that was done. There's certain jobs that are below zero. What I mean by that is, if you were to ask women what kind of job makes you most attractive, lawyer is number 1, by the way. It's funny. Being unemployed puts you at like a 3 out of 10. Being a janitor puts you below being unemployed, meaning you're actually less attractive to women. Being a janitor, being in custodial work, you're less attracted to women doing custodial work than you are being unemployed. How crazy is that?
That is crazy.
Because women have this facility to, and by the way, you know how many, there's too many attorneys right now. So many attorneys I know who are in massive levels of debt and don't make any money, but women are throwing themselves out of attorneys, not understanding that a guy who owns a janitorial service might make $400,000 a year. I talked to a lineman the other day, lineman, the guys who fix the power lines.
Oh, those guys make bank.
This guy makes $700,000 a year as a union lineman. Because it's an athletic job. Let me say it one more time. He makes $700,000 a year as a lineman in California, bro. And these women would have no ability to discern that this lineman is a far better chance for provisioning. He's a great athlete and he makes a lot of money. You have to be an athlete to be a lineman. Yeah. You're going to get better genetics and more money, but you'd rather be with the attorney or the fuckboy that you met as a bartender. So there's this, but why is that happening? It's because of the attraction cues. There's a certain status that comes with being an attorney that does not come with being a union lineman. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so the status confuses people. And so what I said before, the first one I said was social status. The next one I said was pre-selection or mate choice copy. The next one I said was humor, the ability to network. The next one I'll tell you, this is a really big one. It's access to scarce resources. And when people hear that, they're going to immediately think Michael's talking about money. I'm not talking about money. Okay. Money is a scarce resource that you can use, but also, I know this one woman, she had an issue where she was assaulted when she was younger by a man. a very difficult, traumatic experience. And from then, every man that she actually dated Rich Piana. You know, the humongous dude who's like abuses steroids. She said, every guy I dated after my assault, I wanted big, humongous men to protect me. A man's physical ability, men are about 100% stronger in their upper body and 50% stronger in their lower body than women are. A man's ability to protect a woman, even though from a logical standpoint, she could just buy a Glock and live in a high rise and she's not going to really have to worry about her protection. The reality is there's still evolutionary cues where some women are looking for that physicality as a resource. Men being tall as a resource, men being good looking as a resource, and money. But those are not the ones I want to talk about. What I want to talk about is, like, for me, when a girl comes to Las Vegas and she goes, oh my God, I love Tiesto. I was like, oh, that's crazy. I'll literally take her to Omnia, walk her on stage and introduce her to Tiesto. She's like, her eyes are big and she's blown away. So access to scarce places and scarce resources are another attraction cue that works very well. There's a guy that I knew who all he did was did the artist wristbands. He would put the artist wristbands on the girls at XS. And this guy slept with so many supermodels. I can't even express to you, because he gave girls access to the artist, to the high status area. That makes sense? So access is another attraction cue that works really well. Social alignments are another one. So basically, like, who do you know? For me, another big one is whenever I go to a restaurant, I tend to pick like 2 or 3 restaurants that I go to on a regular basis. I'll go on a first date. And one of the things I'm counting on is for the chef to literally come out from the back and greet me and be like, oh my God, Mr. Sartain, it's so good to see you. That does so well on a date. I cannot express to you. When you go to a place and like everyone there knows you, the valet's running up. It's like, Mr. Sartain, that kind of thing. It shows social alignments and social acuity. And it shows social calibration. Another thing is social calibration. So basically, how do you work a room? Another massive attraction trigger is leader of men. So a lot of times, I've done this before. I have a friend of mine, he's a dating coach. And if he really likes a girl, what he'll do is he'll have this like large, I'll be honest with you, he's Owen Cook. He's the guy who owns RSD. So Owen will, if he likes a girl, he'll like literally go and have a speech, like a free tour. He'll have hundreds of guys walk in there and he'll specifically invite the girl he likes to sit in the front row so she can witness hundreds of men hanging on his every word. So this is leader of men. This is another attraction trigger. These are all ones. So being able to protect people, like I said before, access to resources, money. Now let's get to money specifically. Money is a double-edged sword. Most people, this is going to be hard for a lot of guys to understand this when they hear this. Most of you who have a lot of money, let's just say, Ryan Pineda, he has a saying, he goes, above $250,000 a year, you should be hiring people to take stuff off your plate. It's called Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell. He wrote a great book about that. Okay.
I'm actually reading that book right now.
Okay. So let's just, for right now, top 10% of wage earners in the United States is $134,000 a year. So let's say you make more than $134,000 a year. That's who I'm talking to right now. If you make more than $134,000 a year, I can almost promise you to about an 80 to 90% certainty, money is hurting you with women.
Interesting.
Money is hurting you with women. What it does is men see money as a crutch and they're like, how do I make this problem go away? And so the extreme example is seeking arrangement, passport bros, going to Colombia to sleep with girls that are, fun girls. They're just prostitutes. Like, it's basically sex tourism. That's extreme examples of using money in the wrong way. And then other examples would be like a guy like meets a girl and buys her a necklace on the first or second date. So here's the rule when it comes to money is very important that guys understand this. Buying experiences for a woman is totally acceptable. Hey, so I have a friend of mine. What he does is he gets a villa in Mexico with like 6 bedrooms in it in his villa. He gets a room in Mexico with like 6 bedrooms in his villa. And he tells girls, I'm not going to pay for you to fly out here, but if you fly yourself out here, you can stay in the villa for free. So he's paid for an experience. I know other guys that will take female friends with them to dinner. Dinner is totally fine. Those are experiences. Experiences where you guys have fun together. Taking a group of female friends to like fucking taking them to the movies. Okay, you guys all go to the movies together, and one of the girls starts having a crush on you. She likes you. Those are fine. What you never do as a man, though, in the beginning, unless this is a woman who lives with you, has your children, you're having sex with her on a regular basis, you are not paying for her house, you're not paying for her car note, you're not paying for her tuition, you're not paying for shoes, you're not paying for bags, and you're not paying for jewelry. And you're also not paying for clothes. You're not paying for any of those things. That is stuff you do not do as a man, because what you're doing is you're using money to buy affection. And most of you listening to this have fallen into this trap. This is where most guys with money most of you have this problem is what you don't understand. Money is to create a funnel to bring beautiful women into your life. So money is a double-edged sword, but I'm actually going to probably come up with a course. Me and a couple of friends of mine, we're going to come up with a course specifically on men who are high net worth gentlemen, how they don't get, taken advantage of by sexual predator, by financial predators. So that's another one. But those are some of the attraction ones. Those are some of the attraction triggers. Like we said before, a competency, social calibration, high levels of networking, access to scarce resources, access to scarce locations, pre-selection, humor, and social status.
Those are awesome. I want a couple follow-ups for those women. So there are tons of men that are buying all of those things for girls, right?
Yeah.
Like, is there this dichotomy between, like, are they just not lower class, but like, for lack of a better term, lower class women? Like that actually use OnlyFans to get gifts and all these different things, right? Like they're actually
no. You're extrapolating even further than I was. I'm just talking about, like, if you listen, guys, if you go on a date with a woman and on the first date you buy her jewelry, she'll take your jewelry. Even if she's not a low class woman, she's going to take your jewelry, guys. Right. If you offer, like most girls, like let's just say, like, you're having a fun time with her, you went on 2 dates, you haven't slept with her, you offer to pay her rent, most women are going to say yes. Not most, but a lot of women are going to say yes. They're not low class women. They're just, you're offering. Like, dude, if you came in here right now, I'm on a diet. If you came in here right now and you had a bunch of like pink box donuts, and you're like, hey, Michael, you want a donut? Like, I'm on a diet, but I'm probably going to eat the donut. If you offer me the donut, I'm going to eat the donut. Like, that's just, it's in front of me. It's hard. It's like what people on diets need to stay away from: pizza and donuts. Don't put them in the room. If you give women the option to do this, they're just going to do this, right? It's not a function of like higher status or lower. Like, we haven't even gotten into like who you choose. Let me give a real simple solution for this, Kevin. A lot of men will say, I don't like women because they're on OnlyFans or post a lot on social media, or they'll say, I don't like women because of the body count they had before they got into the relationship. I got one simple rule that's going to help all of you guys. Ready? It is the level of stimulus she needs to be happy. That's it. I know women right now who are professional models. They don't really like modeling. They have someone who posts for them. They do not care at all about how many likes they get, but they happen to be so physically attractive that this is a great way for them to make money. They don't need a lot of stimulus, but they happen to be models. So this might actually be a decent pick for someone to be with. Like, this might be a faithful woman. But I know some women that are very mid, and they, like, every time they get a famous person, like, they doctor all their photos to make themselves look way more attractive than they actually are. They use FaceApp and Facetune to do that. And then they'll get messages from like Tyga or Michael B. Jordan or Drake or like some of these other famous accounts, famous content creators or famous rappers or whatever. And by the way, if these ladies don't know that, it's not actually Drake who's messaging you. He gives his account to another guy, and his job all day is to just like scrounge up women. That's all he does. Same thing with Tyga. Same thing. Like, there's these guys who are like scoundrels in Los Angeles, and all they do. Chris Brown's another example. He just has someone who just messages girls for him all day long on his account. And these guys these guys that do this, a lot of women will go out with these guys, and you'll say, okay, if you're dating a woman, what is the likelihood of her opening a message from some celebrity? If it's a high likelihood, what does that mean? She probably needs more stimulus. That's a bad bet for a long-term relationship, and that's actually a bad bet for paternity certainty. So I would not. For me, the ultimate litmus is how much how much stimulus does she need? A woman who needs a lot of stimulus in order to feel happy. So it's like, she has to be on stage. There has to be bottles of champagne. She has to take Molly every night. She's doing a lot of drugs. She always needs to be at the coolest parties. She goes to Ibiza. She knows where every single nightclub is. Every year she's in Dubai. Every year she's in Saint-Tropez. Every year she's at Art Basel. Every year she's at Burning Man. Every year she's at Coachella. This would be a terrible woman to be in a relationship with. Terrible.
And expensive.
Expensive, yeah. That would be a terrible, because you're always like, you're spending money to give her more stimulus, which is just feeding her addiction to stimulus. High levels of addiction to stimulus. And there's also correlations between that and narcissism. But like, that is a bad, so it's not, because you're never going to really know body count. I know a lot of people are like, well, I could tell by the way she dresses how many people she slept with. I'm going to tell you, that's not true. Like, I know one girl who dresses incredibly provocatively, and she has sex with her husband on her OnlyFans and no one else. Like, so she's been with one guy in 20 years. So she's not lascivious. Online she is, but her and her husband have a very good relationship, and they have 3 kids together, and they're both multimillionaires because of her OnlyFans. So this is an example where you're like, oh, I can tell by the way she dresses how many bodies she has. No, you can't. But what you can tell is the likelihood of you being able to make the relationship work based on the amount of stimulus she requires in order to feel something. Another is what type of stimulus. So whenever I talk to women who are consistently cheated on by their exes, or consistently are in situations where they're being psychologically or even physically abused, if I see that as a pattern, I know that I'm not going to provide that level of abuse for her. So she's going to lose interest in me. In her mind, she's like, oh, I can't believe he abused me like this. This is terrible. In my mind, I'm like, you've been with 3 men who have abused you like this. This tells me this is what you need in a relationship in order to feel stimulated, in order for you to achieve equilibrium. I'm never going to treat you like that. I remember it was me living in Vegas. There was one woman. She actually moved to Australia with her male stripper boyfriend. And then when she was there, when she was having the baby, he was off cheating on her with like a couple of other women. And she's telling us this story. She moved back to Vegas. She's telling us this story. And I'm just like, in my mind, like, you want us to feel sorry for you because you left here with a male stripper to like have a baby with him, and you're surprised that he cheated on you? And it was the first time when I ever looked at a woman who was that physically attractive and thought to myself, I'm turned off by her attitude. Women who are consistently like allowing that behavior, it's one of these situations where it's like, it's a bad bet for you. If a woman is consistently choosing men who cheat on her and you're a faithful man, she's going to lose interest in you. This is what I mean before about the type of stimulus a woman needs in order to feel some kind of way. And then there's other types. Like, for instance, I know some women, it's like their entire seduction process involves drugs and alcohol. They cannot have sex without drugs and alcohol being involved. It's a common thing in these party towns, girls who are in college or places like Las Vegas or Los Angeles. The level of stimulus they need is constantly drugs and alcohol. That's the way. Like, for instance, they had an ex, and their ex would go out, they'd get drunk together, and they would do cocaine together. And that's what she's used to as far as her seduction process. She's going to be like, oh, I want to stop drinking. I want to stop doing drugs. But there's always this voice in her mind that's like, this is boring. This guy's boring. I want to do something else. So what I like is, there's one girl I'm seeing, she lives in North Dakota. All she does is she rescues animals and she watches Netflix and she goes to the gym. She requires no stimulus whatsoever. She's a model, but she doesn't post on her social media ever. She has a team that posts on her social media. And she's like, and she'll message me, she'll call me, FaceTime, and she'll be sitting there with a puppy and is like, yeah, I just want to sit here and play with my puppy. She requires very little stimulus for her to be happy. And so we've been seeing each other on and off for like 3 or 4 years because of that. And that's why that's worked better for me. The woman I was dating previously was from a southern city. She had no social media when we met, or very, very little social media. She had like fewer than 50 followers, something like that. And she just required very little stimulus. The only stimulus she needed was the stimulus that I provided. And the relationship worked very well because of that. Because of that whole thing. So my number one piece of advice when men are choosing a long-term partner, is like, the number one red flag I would look for is, does she require great levels of stimulus in order for her to feel satisfied? She's always looking at the next guy, the next car. She wants the next piece of jewelry. She always wants the bigger bag. She has to stunt on her friends. She wants the nicer shoes. She has to go to the nicer restaurant. She needs to take videos of her food every time she goes out. If this is a situation that you're dealing with where it's like, she like literally you have a date planned with her on Thursday, but she misses the date because she's going to go on stage to see Tiesto. That lets you know that this woman requires a lot of stimulus. You can still date her, have a lot of fun with her. Definitely not a long-term definitely not a long-term partner.
Would it be fair to say that a high-performing man then would not normally choose or shouldn't choose a broken woman? Because all those things that it's not that there's anything wrong with them, but they're not. I mean, clearly there is something broken in order to require drugs, alcohol, all of those things, right?
So in that case, of course, you're right. Of course, when we're talking about drugs or alcohol, or we're dealing with a woman who has, like, say, suffering from borderline personality disorder or something like that, of course, when you say broken, but like, do you understand the way therapy is being taught to men right now is that basically men are defective women. Therapy, the vast majority of therapists right now are female, and they're teaching men to try to be more vulnerable. And this is not the appropriate therapy that men need. Men need to accomplish goals. That's why there's this thing called behavioral activation therapy, as opposed to dialectical behavioral therapy, which is the treatment for borderline personality disorder. Men going out and accomplishing goals tends to get them over. It has a very, very high correlation with getting them over depression. going out and shooting baskets or doing stuff with your friends, playing flag football, frisbee golf, whatever, some kind of outdoor sporting activity, getting sunlight, getting vitamin D, these things, doing an activity, getting a new bench press max, going to the gym. These things have been shown with high, like I believe 80% of efficacy in getting people over depression. Whereas SSRIs have a 40% effectiveness rate. Exercise has an 80% effectiveness rate. So men accomplishing goals and going out and doing things seems to be the way for them to get over depression. And so that's the main thing that we have to see as men and women, is that men and women are different. And the therapeutic community, instead of telling men, hey, you have a burden of performance and you need to go out and perform and accomplish a goal, what they're saying is you need to be more vulnerable. You need to do exactly what men do. So now here's the rub on the question you just asked. When you say women who are broken, women don't speak men in general. Heterosexual women don't speak men, and heterosexual men don't speak women. So from that standpoint, we're both broken to the opposite gender. Does that make sense? It's like if I'm with a group of women. Now,
And I mean, obviously, I would never say, hey, woman, you're broken, right?
Yeah, but when we talk about broken, if we're dealing with a woman who's psychologically sound, but she keeps thinking that her emotions matter more than objective reality, which is it's a function called standpoint feminism. You guys can look it up. It's a second wave feminist ideal, which is basically your perspective as a human being, as a disenfranchised human being, matters more than objective reality, and the only reality that can be pieced together comes from disenfranchised people. But what this does, though, is it makes you completely unaccountable for your actions. And so what you'll see, and I've seen this before, is you'll be dealing with a woman who in every other function is normally functioning, but she, from every other psychological function, she's a normally functioning woman. And she still believes that her emotions, her feelings matter more than objective reality. The extreme example is the woman who has a dream about her husband cheating on her, wakes up, punches her husband. She goes, oh, I just had a dream about you cheating on me. And he's like, I didn't cheat on you. And she doesn't apologize. And she goes back to bed and thinks she's totally validated for punching her husband for something he didn't do because it feels like he did it. That type of mentality is something you find far more pervasive in women than men. And that, from a man's standpoint, if we had a guy friend who was doing that, we would think he is broken. Right. So that's the problem, is like, because women don't speak men and men don't speak women, at least not very well. You can't say the word broken, but there is legitimate broken, like you said before, an addiction to drugs, maybe had
addiction to abuse, like you talked about,
addiction to
dopamine,
abuse,
and all that stuff, right? Yeah.
Addiction to attention, addiction to drugs, addiction to alcohol, addiction to abuse, possibly a previous sex worker, things like that. Those are going to be things where I would say not a really good choice for a long-term commitment. And what you're going to find is, when you have a buddy who we've all had a guy friend who's dating someone we know is bad for them, what's happened is he feels he's lower status and he's getting sexual access consistently, maybe for the first time, and a validation from a woman, maybe for the first time in a long time. And because of that, his standards are so much lower that he's accepting a certain level of abuse. What happens is higher status men who know every day they could get multiple dates with multiple women. And by the way, this includes married men. They know that if things went wrong, they could easily find another woman. Those men are going to tolerate less of that behavior. Here's the irony. Here's the rub. Here's the part people don't understand, Kevin. These higher status men, because they will tolerate less of this behavior, are actually more attractive to women and have more successful relationships because they set those boundaries. Here's the ultimate dichotomy for men out here who are having trouble understanding how women work. If Kevin, let's just imagine you and I are running a company together and we have a closer. We have a sales closer. And this guy is doing 3 times better than any of our other closers. Every KPI we can every quota we can put in front of this guy, he crushes it. What are we going to do as managers of this closer? Are we going to punish him or are we going to reward him?
Definitely reward him. Yeah.
We're going to reward him. And there's no even consideration. No. He did more for us. So because we're men and we believe in a meritocracy, we're going to reward him with more responsibility and more money. Correct? You understand that concept? Correct.
Yeah, 100%.
If you are a man in a relationship with a woman and you consider what she says and believes is like the ultimate word, you go to therapy, the therapist tells you need to listen to your woman more and do what she says. You do everything she says. You and I know very well that any man who does everything his woman says, what is the result of that?
I mean, he's weak and she's going to leave at some point.
So again, remember, in my job, if I do everything that my employer says and I perform adequately, I am rewarded. This is the paradigm that most men are used to. In my relationship, if I do everything that my woman says and I follow the very bad dating advice from like the American Psychological Association, which doesn't treat men and women to be different and tries to separate biology from psychology. If I take the bad advice and listen to exactly what my woman says, she will punish me for doing everything that she says. This is the paradigm that the doctor, the accountant, the lawyer, the highly technical, highly logical man does not understand this paradigm when it comes to women. Often, as a high status man, you're going to disappoint women. You're going to have be a situation where you have to do something to make money today. So you have to take on a lot of responsibility. You have to do a bunch of meetings, whatever. And you're doing 75 hard. So you're trying to get in really good shape. So you're doing 2 workouts a day. And in her mind, she's like, I need more time for me. You need to stop going to this meeting and you need to stop going to the gym. And when you go to your therapist and your therapist is like, you need to listen to what your wife says more. So what do? You start relaxing at work. You start relaxing in the gym and you forget about this whole idea that because you decided to take it easy doesn't mean other men will. And those other men will take your woman and your job. We as men always have a burden of performance. You need to always understand that. No one's coming to save you. None of you gentlemen are good look. Maybe some of you are, but most of you are not good looking enough to where some woman's going to come save you. So you consistently have to work. And this is very confusing for a lot of men because they're like, if I do what my employer says, and by the way, this is a bad paradigm. Your wife is not your employer. But if I do what my employer says, I'm rewarded with more responsibility, more authority, and more money. If I do what my wife says in every single instance, then I'm punished by her because I come off to her as weak and boring. And that it's very difficult for men to understand this dichotomy. It's very difficult. Guys, I'm going to give you a piece of advice. If you have children, you should take care of your children. But not because your wife wants you to, but because it objectively is the right thing to do. If you have a wife and you want to stay faithful to her, not cheat, take you and your kids to children on a regular basis, just be an upstanding citizen on planet Earth. You should not do so because your wife wants you to. You should do so because objectively it's the right thing to do. You as a man should understand objectively these are the right things to do. I'm not saying don't ever do what your wife wants, but just understand that for most heterosexual relationships, and I'm talking about the mid to high 80 percentile, a man is going to lead at least 1% more. It's 51-49. And in doing so, if you do, because again, if a woman did everything that I wanted, you know what I would do? I would marry her. I'm going to say that again. If a woman did everything I wanted, I would marry her. I would have children with her, and we wouldn't need a prenup. I'd leave everything to her. If a woman did everything I wanted. As a woman, if I do everything a woman wants, she will leave me. That is the difference you need to understand as a man. There's going to be people telling you that what I just told you is toxic, and then you go find any anecdotal experience from any of your friends, especially those who have been divorced, and they will all tell you that what I'm saying is unequivocally accurate.
100%. And even to your point where you're talking about as a dad, one of the challenges I think most dads have, because we deal with a lot of dads and married people and all that stuff, is their wife leaves them a list as if they're a 14-year-old babysitter.
Yes.
Throw that list away and take care of your children in the way that you want to take care of them. I mean, basically as a dad, the way I see it is my wife goes somewhere, as long as the kids are still alive when she gets back and they're happy, and maybe they're not happy, I've pretty much done my job, right? Like I don't, because I think so many women use motherhood and fatherhood as a weapon against men, right?
Yeah. And by the way, no one is doing like your heterosexual attraction to an attractive woman is not your fault. You didn't do anything to make that happen. It's a function of genetics. And a woman being hypergamous or in shit testing men is not her fault either. It's just a function of evolution. She's consistently, what she doesn't need is a man to do everything she wants. What she needs is a man to consistently show her that she made the right choice. I had a baby with an alpha male. She needs to know that, and she's going to want to try to see that every day. When she tests you, if you get hyper reactive to it, you start yelling back at her. Now what's happened is this is a really messed up situation. So you have a woman who consistently tries to pick fights with you, and she's doing so because she needs a certain level of validation. if you engage with her in those fights, what are you training her to do? You're training yourself and you're training her that in order for her to get the attention she's looking for, she has to start a fight with me.
Yeah.
And the reality of the situation is when you can tell that she is deliberately trying to start some conflict with you for no reason, for you to be non-reactive is the actual answer. And it's hard for guys to understand that concept. You should actually not be rewarding a woman who's trying to start trifling arguments with you with attention. You should be rewarding the woman who brought peace into your life with attention. It's hard for us as men to do that because we're not used to that. We're not used to being treated that way. And so that's something you have to understand as a man. And it's very difficult because you understand when especially the really wealthy, successful guys that come into the program, they understood they used logic and reason and accountability in order to build a business that made them 6, 7, or 8 figures. They understood that I use logic, reason, and accountability, and I rewarded people based on a meritocracy. And in doing so, I made more money and I enjoy my business because I get to do what I love for a living, regardless of what it is, because I use logic, reason, and accountability. Then they take that same paradigm of logic, reason, and accountability into the relationship, and they don't understand why it doesn't work. because it's an evolutionary mismatch.
Yeah.
It really is an evolutionary mismatch. And that's what happened. I'm not telling you guys that your wife's opinion doesn't matter. Of course it matters. She has a ton of information. She might know you better than you know yourself. But one of the issues is you need to take right action because it's right action and not because you're being demanded to do so by like you said before, by the list that your wife gave you, where she's trying to be the leader in the home. For some women, and this is happening more and more today than at any time in history, they're being taught through adolescence, through high school, and in college that men are basically Homer Simpson. They're not
Right.
dependable. They're doofuses. You shouldn't listen to them. That men don't know what they're talking about. You can't depend on them. And the only true north, the only true wisdom that exists is female intuition. Women are being taught this consistently. If you've ever been around a female who doesn't respect her boyfriend, doesn't respect her dad, you're going to find out she doesn't respect any of the male figures in her life because somewhere along the line, either a female figurehead or the mother or whatever, maybe mom was divorced and told her that all men were shit, something to that extent. She's never learned how to respect a man. And she's been taught her whole life that men are the problem and that men should not be counted on. Men are not dependable. And the only thing that you can count on truly is female intuition and your internal feelings. And of course, we know as men that if the world were just run on female intuition and feelings, we would never construct a building. We would never get to work on time. The trains would not work on time. We would have no infrastructure as far as like water or electricity. Those things would not happen. We would not be able to execute military campaigns. We would have no internet because those things, in order to make internet work or in order to build the infrastructure of a city, you need to understand and manipulate objective reality. Objective reality. And the only true north that we understand as men is objective reality. And so for women, when they're taught, well, men believe in objective reality and they cannot be counted on because they're not dependable, then the only true north for them is their feelings. And then that's when we get into this conflict. Men do not speak women and women do not speak men. Did I lose you, Kevin?
You said about 85% of women at some point.
Are you still there?
Sure am. Lost your audio. Hold on. No audio. Check. I can still see that my audio is working. There we go. Now your audio's
You
back.
got me?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, my internet just said, okay, I'm done.
Are you in Los Angeles?
No, I'm actually in Montana. So we
Okay.
run, we have like little mouse and hamsters
Yeah.
that spin on a wheel to make our.
Yeah, it's funny. I bet your internet's better than it is in LA. That's the worst internet I've ever seen in my life.
Now, you're in Texas?
No, I'm in Vegas.
You're in Vegas. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry about that. So
No problem.
we're recording again, so it should be
Sure.
cool. You were talking about the objective reality. We can't get internet built. We can't get water done. That's kind of where you were going on, because women basically can't do an objective. They don't look at objective reality.
It's not that all women don't look at objective reality. I had 2 squadron commanders when I was in the Air Force, and they both looked at objective reality. What I'm saying is, often there are women out there that, for whatever reason, in their upbringing, they were taught that men are not dependable and male intuition is not dependable, and therefore, because men sort of worship objective reality through whether it's natural selection or Newtonian physics or engineering or economics or whatever, that because men are not dependable, therefore objective reality is not dependable, and the only thing that you can count on is the feelings that you have inside. And while that may make you feel better in the short run, it also does not feed the child. It doesn't make you money. It does not keep you healthy. Objective reality is the things that cause you to be able to raise a child and live a long life. And so I think that's where as we get further and further away from a survival scenario, you can see this on the internet. More and more delusional people feel comfortable spreading their more and more delusional beliefs. I had a woman come on my show recently who was basically saying women can wait till they're 50 to have children. She was actually saying this on the show. And I was like, it was very clear she needed to feel that inside because she was, in her 30s, late 30s, and hadn't had a kid. And in her mind, she's like, it made her feel better to say that out loud. But objective reality is, of course, at 50, you have a far less than 1% chance of being able to conceive a child. And she was just basically telling me that I was wrong. And she was also telling me that natural selection and evolution wasn't real. This video went viral, incredibly viral. Very few likes, a ton of comments because of what was going on there. So this is just a situation where in her mind, somewhere down the line, she was taught that objective reality that she was learning in college, that cannot be depended on. And her feelings are the only thing that can be depended on. And so that's why she's gone into that situation. And she happens to be physically attractive enough to where she can get away with it. She lives in a world where she doesn't have to live it. She doesn't have to live in objective reality. This woman doesn't have an OnlyFans, but let's just say a woman did believe that the earth was flat and that natural selection wasn't real, but she had an OnlyFans. It doesn't hurt her. From a survival standpoint, it makes no difference in her ability to survive because she doesn't believe that the earth is round.
Yeah.
And so from that standpoint, now we can propagate these nonsensical ideas more and more. By the way, men are guilty of this too. They're just not as guilty. In general, at the highest rungs of society, men do believe in objective reality. It's just, I've seen often, you'll see, I see The View, they'll sit there and argue about how men are intimidated by women who have a career and a job. And it's like, it's absurd. That's objectively not true. Men are not intimidated by women who make more money. They're choosing women who have more time for them. If I have a choice between a woman who makes a lot of money, but she's an attorney and works 80 hours a week, and then I have another woman here who's younger and has more time for me, I want sex. I'm going to have more sex with a younger woman who doesn't have a career. It's not a function of intimidation. Intimidation is a code word that women use for why they are not getting chosen when they're 35 years old in the middle of their career. And it's like that they're not using objective reality. Objectively, I'm not intimidated. Objectively, I'm making a preferential choice. Just like women can have preference for taller men versus shorter men, I can have a preference for a woman who has more time for me.
Yeah, because I mean that's the argument with causation versus correlation, right? Like there are certain probably personality traits and all that too. I want to ask, first of all, do you think it's just getting worse? It seems like you've got serious job security with this, because it seems like it's just getting worse. One of the things I really have a heart for are younger men, to kind of like, all right, so how do we help you get out of this BS ideology that we're facing right now, where gender and all the craziness that we have, like, where are we going from here? Like, what are these young men? And part of it, I was going to ask you about physicality, right? Like when you and I are probably similar ages, but when I was in high school, right, you had like, everybody worked out. Like we all wanted to
Everybody
be,
worked out. Everyone played football, even if you had no business playing football.
Yeah.
Everyone played basketball. Yeah, all that's gone.
We
Yeah,
wanted
these
to
kids
be
don't care
fit,
at all.
right? Like we
Yeah.
wanted to be
Yeah.
physically fit. And now it's like some of these kids are like, you know, you had that one
Yeah.
super skinny beanpole kid,
Yeah.
right? Now it's all of them. So
Yeah.
like, how do those get, how do we help those kids?
A part of it, I mean, there's so many things that are going on here. Part of it's what they're taught. Part of it is also what they eat and what they're exposed to as far as plastics and as far as fragrances are concerned. It has to do with the water supply. The higher levels of estrogen in the water supply, which is causing, and by the way, estrogen is a molecule. It's not a bacteria or a virus, so you can't boil it out. It's much harder to get it out of the water supply. Great book on this called Estrogeneration. And so because of that, what we're seeing is the feminization of males. So men are getting more exposure to exogenous testosterone, and they're also like have less exposure to more exposure to exogenous estrogen, and then less exposure to testosterone and less necessity to make testosterone. And so what we're seeing is the lowest testosterone levels in a long time. And when men get on TRT, we're starting seeing them, you'll start to see them like they come back to life. I was just reading a study yesterday. This is absolutely true. You guys can look this up. Men with higher grip strength and higher upper body muscle strength are more likely to be against wealth redistribution. Stronger men are more likely to vote Republican. Look it up. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm just made the whole fucking thing up. Look it up for yourself. Ask ChatGPT, ask whoever you want. This is absolutely true.
Well, anecdotally, I will tell you that in my wife's phone, my name is Gorilla because I'm one of those guys. I'm a mechanic. I build stuff.
Yeah.
I break stuff with my hands unintentionally all the time.
Yes.
And so like, and I happen to be a Republican and I own multiple guns.
Yes. But it's like, it's so crazy when you read this stuff. So these men are taking TRT. What I expect to happen, this is the next thing I would look for men to kind of a warning sign, something to look out for in the future. Some of you guys are getting peptides right now. Some of you are on exogenous testosterone taking TRT. You need to make sure I would have multiple clinics on the phone. You're going to start to see a lot of these clinics getting shut down as more men who are politically conservative, physically fit into their late 40s and 50s are taking TRT. You're going to see liberals start to identify that testosterone is part of their problem. It's causing men who are to be more fit later on in life. To like, again, I don't think you or I would be like, I'm a content creator in part. I'm 47 years old. I turned 47 last Saturday. I'm 47 years old and I am in better shape than I've ever been in my entire life. And repeatedly, not of my own volition, I'm getting selected for by 20-year-old women. Women in their 20s want to date me because I stayed in shape. I don't know that this would necessarily be possible, without exogenous testosterone. And so because of that, what you're going to see is I heal quicker. I take BPC 157. It's a peptide. I heal quicker. I take other peptides that help me with my skin and my resting metabolic rate and all these other kind of things, help me heal from injuries, help me sleep better. I'm taking these things and I'm living like I did when I was 19 years old. That's very dangerous now because I'm not 19 anymore. I have the experience and the money of a guy who's 47. And so now I'm a problem for the opposite side. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I would expect in the next few years, you're going to see a push by the FDA to try to make exogenous testosterone more controlled and some of these peptides totally illegal. I would look to see that. Your other question, you're talking about job security. I didn't realize when I first started this program, I started it because I saw things leaning in a certain direction. I didn't realize what a forerunner this program would be, meaning this program was so far ahead of its time that when I started the program, I would say things like, you need social media to help you with your dating life. And now it's like, you don't have any dating life because you don't have social media. Things have gotten so extreme in the last 5 years. It's tilted in that direction. I'm hosting next week. I'm hosting a bikini competition in Mexico. It's a world-class bikini pageant. These girls are coming from there's 60 women competing. It's like a ton of cash and prizes. Very high-class thing that's going on here. We're all in suits and gowns and I have to ask them questions. It's Swimsuit USA. It used to be part of the Miss Universe pageant. And I'm going to be there with 60 women. And a lot of times, like I met my previous girlfriend, like 3 years ago there. The thing is, when I look at my life and how much work I've put into creating this funnel to bring beautiful women in my life, and then I go back home to high school, I go back home to Texas, and I go to see my friends I went to high school with, and I see how incredibly difficult it is for them to even get one girl to show up on a date from a dating app. I'm like, dude, how are you living like this? Like, I can't imagine living like dating apps and singles bars. Like, this is not 1994. This doesn't work anymore. And I just, like, for me, when I built the program, I built it with like, this is sort of an ancillary thing that might help you with your dating and professional life. And now we've gotten to the point where you don't have a business if you're not on social media, and you have no dating life if you're not on social media. And it's completely flipped.
Well, it's basically you're creating a brand, right? It's a person.
Yeah.
You talked about brand in specifically with business, but it's you really. We all have a personal brand,
Yeah.
and you're helping those guys do that. If I just take a couple more minutes of your time, I'm interested in particular. So I've been married 29 years. My wife is a smoke show. She was literally, we modeled together. That's where we met.
Wow.
I was the only heterosexual guy there, so odds were a little bit better, but she's I will be 52 in December. She's 51. Still absolutely beautiful. We work out every day together. She's strong and fit and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm a happily married guy, right? Like, and I mean, exceedingly happy.
Yeah.
To the point where that's a lot of what I try to teach is like, I want your marriage to look like mine when you've been married for almost 30 years.
Yes.
A lot of what we're talking about is kind of this like top of funnel, if you want to use a marketing term, right?
Yeah.
Like, but how does it equate to like a guy like myself, right? Like, obviously I'm not out trying to meet other women. My wife finds me attractive, and, it's so funny because my wife will say stuff like, because all of us kind of go up and down with our fitness levels and cutting and leanness and all that. She goes, well, I love you in all your ways. Well, as it turns out, I do get a little bit more attention when I'm 7 or 8% body fat than when I'm 12% body fat.
Isn't that weird? Isn't that weird?
So,
in sickness and in health, through richer or poorer. Yeah. That's what it said at your wedding, right?
Yeah, that's right.
It's really funny. Rollo talks about this. My buddy Rollo, he'll do an episode of Access Vegas. So it's like me and Rollo and like 8 girls on the show. He comes home to his wife and she just jumps all over it because she's seeing this 55-year-old man. Because the women like Rollo. I know a lot of people are going to be pissed when I say this. We do the show, and afterwards, girls are always flirting with Rollo because Rollo is like he looks like a rock and roll. He's a drummer in a rock and roll band. Like, that's who he is deep down. That's who he is as a human. And so, like, I see these super hot girls, they follow Rollo around, and his wife sees this too, and she's super attracted to him because of it. What I was going to say in your whole situation, for married men, what you're saying is the right idea. You need to stay active, even as a married man. And whether or not this is something that I'm sure this is not something you're consciously doing. Your wife also knows you're attractive to other women, which is part of the reason why she finds you more attractive. That's what the cue of 7 or 8% body fat is. Think about what that means from a genetic standpoint. A 51-year-old man with 7% body fat means exceptionally good genetics. Even if you're on fucking Anavar, Trenbolone, and whatever.
I am on TRT, but not enough to make that easy. I'll tell you right now.
But my point is, you and I both know, we know women who have dated men who make money illegally and they still take the money. Like, think of like The Sopranos, right?
Yeah, right.
Like Eddie Falco and The Sopranos. And we also know women who dated men who took steroids. And the guys had big muscles, and the girls never said, well, he's got big muscles and I'm super attracted to him, but I'm not going to date him because he took steroids. I've never heard a woman say that. Not one time.
They might date him because his balls are the size of a peanut.
Maybe. But like, he's not getting me pregnant, right? There's no way that's happening. But the point I'm trying to make is, I rarely see women look at how a guy became attractive and then just be like, well, because of my I see women date, you and I both know girls who dated drug dealers and guys who took steroids. And from all intents and purposes, they're cheating, but women will still date them. And we will date women who have breast implants. And I know I've seen women who have liposuction, and men will date them. And so we know it's cheating, but that's our subconscious can't tell that it's cheating. And so we still find those people attractive. Remember what I said before about attraction triggers? You're like, I'm a good guy, Michael. I go to church and I have 2 master's degrees and I take care of my niece and I'm really smart and I work hard. I deserve a good woman. It's like, no, you don't deserve shit. And you don't understand attraction triggers, which is the reason why women are going to keep using you as a financial target, and women are going to keep putting you in the friend zone because you don't understand that concept.
Yeah. Man, this has been super interesting. Like I it's just, it's not a world that I live in, right? Like I haven't dated since I dated my wife in 1993. Yeah. Right. Like, so that's a long time.
Bro, it's hard out in these streets, bro. I'm trying to tell you, if you should try it. Like, the two of you, you should just make, not even your face, but like do this experiment. This would be great content for you. take the face and personality of a made-up male, a guy, and make him average looking, and then have your wife operate his dating profile on Tinder, Bumble, and Hinge, and have her see how insanely hard it is for this average looking guy to get a date, and then have her give you her reaction and film it. That'd be incredible content. That'd be incredible content. Look, there's so many videos of women who like have done this experiment where they try to use an average looking man and get dates, and they're like, I did not know women were this mean. Women like they're like crying. They're like, I had no idea, because the women are seeing the rejection is coming on them personally, even though they're using a man's profile. But like after a while, it starts to hurt them. I've seen multiple women, they start crying when they see how mean women are to men on these dating apps.
That's insane.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny because my wife actually does get hit on and people flirt with her and all that. I'm either completely unaware of it or it just doesn't happen to me. And maybe that means I'm too average looking.
No, there's some studies. There's some studies that show this. With people who are consistently accusing their partner of cheating generally are doing so because they're having thoughts of other people themselves. And people who are not consistently accusing their partner of cheating, the reason why is because I'm faithful, I assume that you're faithful. My ex, like, she was always confused. Like, I was never jealous. Like, I never didn't care. She would work out at a gym with a bunch of male influencers. It never bothered me. I just was like, no, I don't care. And by the way, if you ever cheated on me, just make sure he's hot. Don't embarrass me. You know what I'm saying? But I would find, because I knew I would find another girl.
Yeah, you don't want that. She cheated on him with that dude?
With that guy? Yeah. No, because I know, like, I can find someone else very quickly. And I'm also very happy with my life. Right now I'm single. I'm very happy with my life being single as well. So it's like one of these situations where, like, jealousy, man, it's so counterproductive. Doesn't help me accomplish my daily goals. So it's just not helpful for me. Maybe it's just some proclivity that I have because I'm trusting of other people. Maybe because my parents were together for 44 years. I'm trusting of other people. Therefore, I'm trusting of whoever my partner is.
Yeah. Oh, I 100% trust my wife, by the way. It's not, I don't trust other men. And I think she does. She trusts men too much,
And by the way, it's not other men's responsibility to not hit on your girl. It's your girl's responsibility to protect her boobs, her butt, and her vagina and her mouth from other men touching them.
Yeah.
I'm just going to be blunt. I have to be blunt like that. Ladies, if you don't understand, for you, cheating is the lying. For us, is when the cheating is when other men touch your vagina, your butt, your boobs, or your face. That is cheating to us.
Yeah.
Cheating to us is penetration. Cheating for you is lying. It's different.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yep.
Dude, this has been great. I really appreciate your perspective. We didn't even I had a couple of notes here, but we didn't even get to them.
Look, we can do another one of these, but I do have to run. I got to get to the airport.
I'd love that. So enjoy your trip. Thank you very much for coming. And hey, how do we find more information? Just meninaction.com. Is that
the easiest way is to go to Michael Sartain on Instagram, and all the links and everything will be there. You can write me on there. Another way to do it would be go to school, SKOOL.com. It's that new app that Alex Hermosi and Sam Ovens are promoting. Go to school.com/Men of Action free. There's a hyphen in between each word. Just look up Men of Action. It's the first one that pops up. And then the other way is to go to MOAmentoring.com, MOA for Men of Action, MOAmentoring.com, and we can set you up with a demo immediately and get you on your way to learning how to level up when it comes to communication, networking, leadership, and dating.
Dude, you're a rock star, Michael. Thank you so much. Enjoy your, hope the flights go well and enjoy your trip.
All right.
Talk to you soon.
Take care, Kevin.
All right. Bye-bye.
If you're looking to really maximize your life and become the man you were made to be, head over to maxedoutman.com and get your journey started today.